I am happy today to introduce you to Bob Marino of Cafe Press. Bob started off in an entrepreneurial role in his family business and went on to join Tyson Foods, where at Tyson he worked in a number of divisions and running 3 of those divisions before joining Cafe Press in 2005. At Cafe Press, Bob was instrumental in the manufacturing and also the research and development teams, and became its CEO in 2011. Bob has been a tremendous supporter of entrepreneurial efforts in the region, and including being a sponsor of Startup Weekend most recently. So with that, I will turn this over to, here he is, to Bob, and let him share a little bit more of his story with you.
Pleasure to have been invited here. Thank you very much. I noticed when I walked in that a guy who's known me for the last 9 years, all the time I've been in Louisville, is here tonight. Glenn Whitfield, are you still here? There he is, back there. So Glenn and I share soccer player daughters in common. So every weekend I'm with that guy, and we have solved the problems of the world many times over on the sidelines of the soccer field. And tonight he will call bullcrap on anything I may say that's not really what I normally am about. All right? So I was invited a little while ago to attend a startup weekend, and they had another speaker there, and that speaker gave his definition of an entrepreneur, which went something like, well, you know, you just have to have a good idea, you don't have to be successful, and you can be a qualified entrepreneur. That left me a little unsettled. I didn't think that was quite, right. And I appreciate the fact that you guys are known as velocity and that you're an accelerator, because that implies that you're moving something forward, right? Something's growing, something's getting better, and I bet investors will ultimately like that as well. So I'm going to give you my definition of what an entrepreneur is. An entrepreneur is someone that walks up to an existing business model that is highly optimized. It's really running quite well. And they break it up. They turn it on its head. When they're done with it, it looks nothing like when they started. And you know you entrepreneurs are not really the type that like doing the same thing twice, so you don't leave it very optimized. So even this new business model you just created that is highly unoptimized is still better than the highly optimized business model that preceded it. That's my definition for an entrepreneur. Now, I was lucky enough to be born into a family whose patriarch was an immigrant, whose family put absolutely no emphasis on education whatsoever. And he was in New York. He had my first 2 brothers before he had me, and realized we're getting nowhere. So he went back to school at night, 11 years, to get his grade school, his high school, and his college education. And he missed his graduation because that was the day I was born. He still blames me for that. I told him, you're the engineer, you could have done the math. But I was 6 years old when he came home after now having a great job, and announced that he quit that day. Announced that we are now in our own business. I raised my hand and said, who are the employees? My brothers laughed. And my first assignment was to ride my bike to 7-Eleven to get black garbage bags and staple them over the windows of our garage so that the neighbors would not realize they now lived next to a machine shop. And my dad taught me to weld when I was 6. I'm going to stand here. And when I tell that story to people, people think, well, that sounds like child abuse. I assure you it wasn't. I assure you it was a very privileged upbringing. And together, my dad and I built a very successful business. And even though the government sometimes tell you that you didn't build that, I can guarantee you that we even built the road that went to the plant. We did build that, and we called it American Way. And you're going to see throughout my speech that I'm going to talk to you about not just entrepreneurs, but entrepreneurs in our community and why that's so important for America. And I even made notes because I consider it a really special subject. Okay. So the first thing I was asked to talk about is why did Cafe Press come here 9 years ago, which is when I came here. And by here I mean Louisville, but of course the surrounding area. Well, we came here, quite frankly, because UPS came here. But why did UPS come here? UPS came here because it's a very privileged geography. You can hit 2/3 of the American households with a 2-day ground transit. UPS could have gone to other bits of geography that would do the same thing, but they chose to come here. They chose to come here because there was an abundance of affordable, quality, loyal workers, which is a polite way of saying that we all didn't do our jobs because there was an oversupply of talented labor and an undersupply of jobs. It's another reason why they moved in here. And despite their presence here, which has been great, we still need to do more because in many respects that's still the case for this area. Yeah, so that's why we moved our manufacturing here. So why did we move our headquarters here? Well, for those of you that know the story, I could sum it up with one word. We moved our headquarters here because of a tent, T-E-N-T. Why a tent? Well, it was very, very obvious to me. My first role was to also build a plant in Louisville. We had a plant already in California. It was very obvious to me 5 months before our peak, which is Christmas time, that this is going to be a disaster. We don't have enough business to afford 2 plants. And the plant in California is in the wrong place because of shipping. It's in the wrong place because we can't expand it. So it was very obvious that we're going to have to shut down the California plant and move everything here and do so in a hurry, like 3 months, and try to get through peak. So we invited every one of the employees we had, we weren't a very big business back then, to come with us, and half did. And I'm happy to say that, almost a decade later, they're still with us, here in Louisville. But it was just the worst peak, the worst professional period of my time. We didn't have any of the systems we needed to build the stuff we were alleging that we could make online. We didn't have any of the systems necessary for me to know, are we even keeping up with demand? And I said to the staff, this is going to be the worst time ever. But if you stand with me and we deliver and we make this business grow, your reward for doing that will not be me walking up to you and introducing you to your new boss. I will walk up to you and introduce you to your new team of subordinates. So apparently they thought that was a pretty fair deal, and without me even asking them, they erected a tent in the corner of the building that we were in, because about half a dozen of them knew that if they left for any more than 4 hours, we weren't going to make it. And some of those folks did not leave for 2 weeks plant in that first season. So that does say something about the stock right here in our community, right? It's a very earthy community, very hardworking community. So in 2009, when Cafe Press had its one and only down season, I was asked by our founder to also now work with him at the front of our business on the sales and marketing side. And I'm happy to say since that period, we've had nothing but 16 quarters of growth. And at some point, the company turned to me and said, would you please now be the CEO? And I thought about that tent. And I said, this place is why I'm the CEO. That tent is why I'm the CEO. So we're going to move headquarters here. We announced that about a year and a half ago. So that's why we moved our headquarters here. So now I'm going to segue into why it is important to have an ecosystem of entrepreneurs in our community. And Glenn is going to be, testimony to this. You're about to get, the unsaturated real deal from Bob Marino. This is how I really think, as scary as it is. Well, I'm going to tell you this meaning that I think I see through a series of vignettes. I'm going to purposely zigzag around so that you even can't tell where I'm going. And then I'm going to try at the end to cinch it all together so you understand what it is we're talking about. All right, so bear with me as it looks like I'm not even talking about the subject that is that I was going to talk about. My dad witnessed World War II. He was not old enough to serve in the Army, but he still wanted to serve, so he joined the Merchant Marine. And his job was to weld these broken holes of ships that the Germans put holes into as a kid. And he loved it, right? But he also knew that it was serious. We had to turn our lights out at night. We had to paint out our headlights on our cars so that the Germans couldn't bomb New York City. Right? He knew that, hey, something's up here. The world could change. So I'm going to do my job. he also knew that there was propaganda. He wasn't exactly sure what he was being told is true. He left room for doubt, but when the war ended, and I got to talk to him several years after the war ended, he was able to decipher, you know what? Yeah, there really were concentration camps in Germany. There really was the Bataan Death March perpetrated by the Japanese. And yes, Americans have atrocities too, but you know what? The way he described it, on a Tuesday we were bombing Germans, but on Wednesday after the war we were dropping care packages on the Germans. So in his estimation, we really need to protect our economy because we really need to control, how the world turns out. And that's why he named the street to his business, American Way. On the Statue of Liberty, what does it say? It says, "Send me your wretched refuge." You know what it really is telling you? We're all losers. We are the small, the downtrodden, and we are all the losers, or at least descendants of losers that came here. And yet, in 200 years, we kicked everybody's ass. Why? Because we're everybody. Because we were the best of everybody. Because we were entrepreneurs. We were cowboys. That's why it happened. So, the last Olympics, that was done in China, if I recall correctly. I remember reading that around the Olympic Village, they asked the factories, maybe not asked, they probably told them, shut down for 4 months. Because we really don't want the world to know that our sky is yellow around the Olympic Village. That's interesting. More, sorry. Last little vignette that I'll try to sum it up. We're all talking about healthcare right now. Socialized medicine. Would it surprise you to know that America has already paid for and implemented a socialized healthcare system? Yeah, it's there, it's working, it's very good. We just don't like the way it's played out because it's played out in Canada. Here's what I mean by that. Canada and the United States enjoy the world's largest trade. Yet they have 30 million people, and we have 300 million. So when they divide that by 30 million, they have enough left over to have socialized medicine. I would argue that we played an important role in that. What would happen to this area if we said to the businesses in this area, you can only sell to folks in this area. Your goods and services can only be sold to folks in this area. But we would steadily watch them all go out of business, wouldn't we? Right? Because the labor cost is just one cost. You have the conversion cost, you have the overhead and profit, you have all these other things. So we have to expand our base. We have to sell beyond where we're at. Well, that means there's winners and losers. By definition, it's a zero-sum game. You have to go in some other territory and make that sale before someone else does. So there's going to be winners and losers. Now, what role does our community play in determining winners and losers? Well, if you follow, now I'm going to try to sum it up. If you follow my logic, right, there's good consequences and bad consequences in the world. And I don't know about you, but I want to be on the team that gets to control those consequences. If you play out cost optimization, that's not the entrepreneur's role. That's the professional manager's role. And they're important. They're important in our world. And they are going to cost reduce everything that they can. But if cost reduction is the only thing that you do, if you don't break the business model and start a whole new business model with an entrepreneurial effort, then cost reduction leads to where can I produce this the absolute cheapest? And that winds up being made where the sky is yellow, where things like civil rights and child labor and women's issues really don't matter quite as much. Right? So I'm trying to make it very real, not just all about how do I get the biggest payday as an entrepreneur, but really how do I control the environment? How do I control the good things that can happen within that environment? So what is the role for America and indeed this community? Well, I think it is to optimize the business model, not optimize the cost. We need a steady diet of entrepreneurs, a steady diet of people who are going to walk up and say, this is not right, let me break it, let me knock it on its head, let me reinvent it. And in so doing, You have revalidated the whole mission, the whole cowboy nature of how this nation ever became a nation. The economy is our